Let me make my position absolutely clear. I do not believe in objective morality, and in this video and the next one I'll seek to explain why. Those who claim there is objective morality normally say that such morality comes from a moral lawgiver, normally from their particular flavour of God, as evidenced in their holy book or their interpretation thereof. And they use such simplistic examples, such as lying, killing, and stealing. Before going further, I'd like you to consider a more complicated, hypothetical moral dilemma.
I want you to imagine that you are a surgeon, and you're a surgeon who suddenly finds himself in charge of a hospital in the middle of a disaster zone. You have 600 staff, you have 200 critically ill people. It's Monday morning. Monday morning, the electricity goes off. The city's electricity goes off, the water supply goes off. Temperatures rise in your hospital to 100 degrees. Tuesday, the sewer system starts backing up. The helicopters that were taking a few of your patients out are no longer coming. On Wednesday morning, the electrical backup generators that had kicked in on Monday go out. On Wednesday, you have no water, no running water, no electricity, none. Your elevators don't move, stairwells are black, you have no electricity. The temperature in the hospital is now over 100 degrees. Sewers are backing up. You're down to about 100 critically ill people. You somehow get through Wednesday. Then on Thursday, you start hearing gunfire. City sheriffs, state police say you have to have the hospital evacuated by 5 p.m. And you have 100 people to deal with, 100 ill patients to deal with. And you're supposed to have them all out of there by 5 o'clock. And there's simply no way you're going to be able to get all of them out of there by 5 o'clock. So what do? You're faced with a number of serious moral questions. How long should healthcare workers have to stay in a hospital if people are going to die? And which of these 100 patients should receive what limited care you have in trying to get them out? The people that you leave who are ill and in pain, where do you draw the line between comfort care and mercy killing? And who's going to make all these decisions? You're in charge. Are you going to make the decision? And when you have to triage these patients, when you have to decide who goes and who stays, how do you make that decision? What's the greatest good here? The number of people you save? The years of life you save? The best quality years? How do you make these decisions? And do you make them alone?
We'll come back to that later. But first, I want to deal with an issue that was raised as a result of part 1 of this series, and in particular, comments made that I had misunderstood the Christian message. The argument, as I understand it, is that God gave us morality directly, rather than indirectly through the Bible or the Ten Commandments. I had intended to respond to this argument in short form, and also somewhat dismissively, until I saw a debate between the former Bishop of Oxford, now a member of the House of Lords, Richard Harries, and Charles Moore on one side, and A.C. Grayling and Richard Dawkins on the other. During the course of that debate, this question was asked.
If the gods or God love justice because it is right, then rightness of justice is prior to God's loving it. God is not the source of the rightness of justice, but commands it because it is already right. God is therefore not necessary for moral order in the universe.
And Richard Harries responded in this way.
Of course, all human beings can have a sense of justice whether they're believers or not. And that is actually fundamental to a classical Christian view, because we believe that all human beings have been made in the image of God, and part of that is a capacity for discerning what is right and wrong. What happens if, in the light of our sense of justice, we come to believe that God is good, all good, our true and everlasting God, good? Obviously that shapes and colours our whole sense of what it is to be just.
So God imbues in us, at what point it is unclear, but presumably at some moment between conception and birth, a nebulous concept known as morality. This morality, it is suggested, is ingrained in us regardless of the Bible, and should lead us to the mind of God and an understanding of what he, she, it considers moral, without the necessity to refer to the Bible. Or is it that God imbues in us a sense of morality, from which we have a capacity to know what is right and wrong, but we need to rely on the Bible to know what that moral code is? I regret to say that I find this concept, or concepts, utterly absurd. Let's leave aside for the time being that there is no evidence whatsoever to support either of those propositions, but we'll try and address them anyway. Which is it? Has God imbued us with morality, with which we are stuck? If that is the case, one would assume that there would be no moral dilemmas or questions, as we would all agree on what was moral in any given circumstance. Given the difference in views that there are between people as to what is right and wrong, that clearly cannot be the case. I sense I can hear the cries from my protagonists and the theists, ringing like an incantation, and with an insistence which belies conviction. Free will, they will say, free will. Well, I'll return to that argument later. The second limb of the argument is that we are imbued with a sense of morality. Now, if that is the case, it leads me back to the point that I made before, namely, that we have to resort to the Bible to find out what is moral and not moral. Do we really want to go to the Bible for our morality?
The God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction. Jealous and proud of it, a petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capriciously malevolent bully.
I'm sure that many people watching are probably saying that I'm just having a cheap shot, and that God has changed since the Old Testament and the New Testament. Well, firstly, I'd like to see any evidence of that. As far as I'm aware, there's none, but that's an issue for another video. However, these people will probably say that they now live by the New Testament, and in particular, the Ten Commandments. The first question to ask in relation to that is which Ten Commandments? Whichever ones you look at, the first four give no moral guidance whatsoever. They all relate to the worshipping of God. The remaining six hardly give a complete picture as to how one should lead one's life. For example, they don't mention paedophilia, incest, homosexuality, rape, violence short of murder, bestiality, pornography, cruelty to animals, slavery, to name but a few. Nor do they help you deal with the moral dilemma that was raised at the beginning of this video. I said that it was a hypothetical situation. In fact, it was real.
Now, some of you may have recognized already that this is not an example from a moral philosophy class. This happened in New Orleans in 2005 at Memorial Hospital. At the last week in August, the first week in September.
So to all Christians out there, tell me, what does your good book, or your God, tell you you should do in such circumstances? If there really was objective morality, there would be no dispute between you. In part 3, I'm going to tell you where I think morality comes from, and also pose another moral dilemma for you to deal with. Thank you for watching.